You ever get the feeling, maybe scrolling online or whatever, where it just seems like everyone in your field, I don't know, coding, writing, business, everyone seems to be absolutely killing it.
Oh, definitely. It's like a constant stream of success stories.
Yeah, like you're just seeing this highlight reel of triumphs nonstop.
And it makes sense, right? We're naturally drawn to success. We see people achieving things, and it's, well, inspiring. Makes you think maybe I could do that too.
Totally. That aspirational spark is real. But I've been thinking more about what we don't see.
Uh-huh.
All the hard work that maybe doesn't end in some big public win, the great ideas that just sort of fizzle out, the sheer number of tries that just don't make it.
And that's exactly where we're headed in this deep dive. This whole idea of survivorship bias.
Right. It's this fascinating and maybe a bit misleading phenomenon.
Precisely. We're looking at sources today that really dig into why we see so many successes and how that shapes or maybe distorts our view of reality in some pretty deep ways, actually.
So the mission today, it's pretty straightforward, but I think really important. Let's try to get a handle on how this bias works, how it twists our view of success, and maybe crucially, how we can spot it in our own thinking.
Sounds good. Where should we start?
Okay, let's kick off with something I think a lot of people can relate to, the aspiring musician, like a rock star dream.
Yeah, this classic example. So picture this guy, let's call him Rick. He wants to be a rock star.
And everywhere he looks, TV, magazines, YouTube, TikTok, he just sees famous, successful musicians. Their songs are everywhere.
It paints this picture of like endless opportunity in music, right?
Right.
It looks achievable because the successes are so loud.
Exactly. So Rick sees all this, gets hyped up, starts a band. But here's the kicker, something our sources really hammer home: his actual chances of hitting that level of fame.
Vanishingly small, realistically speaking.
Yeah, incredibly low. It's kind of brutal when you look at the numbers.
And what's really wild is the scale of what's hidden. Our sources talk about this huge invisible graveyard of failed
A
musicians.
graveyard. Wow.
Yeah, and it's potentially like thousands of times bigger than the group who actually make it onto the charts or whatever. But those stories, they just don't get told.
Right. You never see a magazine cover about the band that practiced for 5 years and played like 2 gigs at the local pub.
Nope, doesn't sell magazines.
It really makes you think about your own field, doesn't it? Like, for every famous chef on TV, how many incredibly talented cooks are out there whose restaurants didn't make it?
Or authors. Think about authors.
Oh, yeah, authors. For everyone you see in a bookstore, how many others, couldn't get an agent or got rejected 100 times or just have a half-finished novel in a drawer?
It just highlights this massive imbalance. We're seeing the absolute tip of the iceberg, the lucky few, really. And we miss the enormous base of people with maybe similar talent, similar drive, who just didn't hit that visible success.
And this isn't just music or writing, is it? The sources are pretty clear. The survivorship bias thing is, well, everywhere.
Absolutely. Entrepreneurs, artists, athletes,
Yeah.
you name it, even scientists, Nobel Prize winners.
Yeah. So the media plays a big role here too, right? They tend to focus on the success stories, the breakthroughs.
Naturally. News loves novelty, achievement. Stories about overcoming the odds. That's what gets clicks and views. The the everyday struggles or the projects that just didn't work out. Less glamorous.
It's like you said with authors, it's kind of a funnel, isn't it?
Totally. You start with this huge pool of people dreaming of writing a book. Then some finish a manuscript. Fewer find an agent. Even fewer get published. And a tiny fraction hit the bestseller list.
And we mostly just see and hear about that tiny fraction at the very end.
Which leads to some interesting questions about, money and risk.
How so? Like investments.
Yeah, think about, say, a friend launching a startup. They've got this cool idea, lots of energy.
Right. And you hear the pitch and maybe you start thinking, wow, this could be huge. This could be the next Google. You get swept up in it.
Exactly. You get caught up in the potential, the vision. Maybe you even think about putting some money in.
But then survivorship bias kicks in, or should kick in, telling us to look at the stats.
Precisely. Because the hard reality, according to the data our sources point to, is that most startups fail. Like a really high percentage fail within just the first few years.
Wow.
And even the ones that survive often don't become massive successes. Many just kind of tread water or stay small.
Okay, so the point isn't never take a risk, right? It's more about calibration.
Exactly. It's about having a much clearer, more realistic picture of the actual odds. That amazing success story you heard about, probably an outlier, a big one.
Knowing that doesn't mean you don't invest, maybe, but you go in with your eyes wider open.
Absolutely. And that this bias, it even creeps into how we read things like stock market indexes.
Oh, like the Dow Jones. How does that work?
Well, think about it. The Dow Jones Industrial Average only includes companies that are, well, survivors, big, influential companies that are still around.
Okay, right. It doesn't include the ones that used to be big but went bust.
Exactly. Or got bought out because they were failing, or just faded away. So when you look at the long-term growth of the Dow, you're basically looking at a curated list of winners.
Which could make you overestimate how well the average company does over time.
It certainly could. It paints a rosier picture than reality because the failures are automatically excluded from the index's history.
That makes sense. It's like a company hall of fame, but you forget about all the teams that didn't even make the playoffs, let alone win the championship.
A good analogy. And
Yeah.
it ties into what our sources say about self-help books or those success coaches.
Ah, yeah. The ones focused purely on how they made it.
Right. The thing is, the people who didn't succeed, whose businesses failed, whose books weren't published, they usually don't write the bestsellers or give the big speeches about it.
Ah, yeah, you don't see many how I tried really hard and it didn't work out guides topping the charts.
So the advice we get is overwhelmingly skewed towards the perspectives of the survivors. We hear their stories, their strategies.
And we miss out on hearing from the probably much larger group who tried similar things and didn't get the same result, which can be tricky, especially if we start having some success, right?
Yes, absolutely. Once you achieve something, maybe get that promotion or launch a successful project, survivorship bias can dig in even deeper.
How so? You start thinking you cracked the code.
Kind of. You might start believing your success was purely down to your specific habits, your brilliant decisions.
And maybe downplaying the role of luck or good timing or just fortunate circumstances.
Exactly. It's so easy to look at other successful people and spot patterns. Oh, they all wake up at 5 a.m. or they all use this networking trick and think that's the secret sauce.
But the counter argument is pretty sobering, isn't it?
It is. If you could actually study that graveyard, we talked about the failed projects, the folded companies.
You might find plenty of people there who also woke up at 5 a.m. and networked like crazy.
Very likely. You'd probably find many shared traits between the successes and the failures, which really cautions against those simplistic formulas for success. It's often more complex than just copying habits. Luck plays a huge role. Timing, things outside our control.
That really makes you pause and question those neat narratives we tell ourselves about why some people make it and others don't. And this bias can even mess with science.
It seems so. Think about scientific research. If you have, say, 100 different research teams all testing the same hypothesis,
Okay.
just by pure chance, a few of those studies, maybe 5 out of the 100, statistically speaking, might show a significant result, even if the hypothesis is totally wrong.
Right, like those headlines you sometimes see, study shows red wine prevents X or something.
Exactly like that.
Yeah.
A few studies find a correlation, maybe just by chance, and those are the ones that get published, get attention, make headlines.
And what about the other 95 studies that found, well, nothing, no link?
That's the problem. Those studies with boring, null results, the ones showing no effect, they often just don't get published. They don't see the light of day.
So our view of the science can get skewed because we're mainly seeing the exciting positive results, even if they occurred by chance.
Precisely. We overestimate the evidence for certain effects because the failures to find that effect remain largely invisible.
Wow. Okay, so this bias is pretty sneaky, showing up all over the place. What do we do about it? What's the antidote?
Well, the core realization, the big takeaway from our sources, is that survivorship bias makes us consistently overestimate our chances of success.
Okay, so step one is just being aware of that inflation.
Right. And step 2, the real countermeasure, is to actively, consciously seek out the other side of the story. You need to look for the failures.
Like the source said, visit the graves.
Exactly. It's a striking phrase, but the idea is powerful. Go looking for information about the projects that didn't work, the investments that tanked, the careers that stalled out in the field you're interested in.
So instead of just reading biographies of CEOs, maybe look for analyses of failed businesses in that sector.
Yes, or talk to people who tried and didn't achieve that huge success. Understand the common pitfalls, the reasons things didn't work out for them, even though they might have been just as smart or worked just as hard.
It might not be as uplifting as reading success stories.
Probably not. It
Yeah.
can be quite sobering. But it's incredibly valuable for getting that realistic perspective we talked about.
It helps you calibrate your expectations and maybe make smarter decisions because you have a fuller picture.
Exactly. A clearer view of the whole landscape, not just the peaks.
Okay, so wrapping this up then, We've dug into survivorship bias, this a tendency we all have to focus on the winners, the successes, and kind of ignore the failures.
And we've seen how that can really warp our perception of things like the odds of success in music, startups, writing, even how we interpret scientific findings.
The key thing, it seems, is remembering that the successes are often just the tip of the iceberg. They're visible, but they don't represent the whole story.
Right. And to get closer to the truth, we need to actively fight that bias by seeking out the stories of failure, the data on what didn't work. That's where so many crucial lessons are hidden.
So here's something for you, the listener, to maybe chew on. Think about one area, could be your job, a hobby, anything where you tend to see a lot of success.
What might that invisible graveyard look like in that specific field?
Yeah, what are the stories, the projects, the efforts that you don't see? Maybe take a little time, do a quick search, see if you can uncover some of those less told tales.
You might be surprised what insights you find when you start looking beyond the spotlight.